Hey everyone, I'm Marvin. Here we believe that teachers are leaders, and our purpose is to equip teachers with the skills and information that they need in order to teach and lead their students to success. And so today I'm going to share with you 6 brain-based principles that every teacher should know. If you want to effectively teach and lead your students, you need to understand this research regarding the human brain. With that being said, let's get started. Number 1, the first thing you need to know about the human brain is that the human brain is a social brain. The human brain is a social brain. And what that means is this: you may or may not have noticed that students, they like to talk. They like to talk. And in some cases, they like to talk while you're talking about things that have nothing to do with what you're talking about. So there is that built-in need for each and everybody to socialize, to talk, to have that interaction, that peer-to-peer interaction, that human-to-human interaction. There's just, bottom line, there is that need within everybody. Now, the challenge for each and every teacher in the world is to take that need and kind of use it in a positive way, and out of that has come the use of multiple strategies to incorporate cooperative learning, group learning, teamwork, and those kinds of things. That's where all of that came from. And early in my career, I was against it at first. I believed that I could just power through it and just assert my authority to cut down on the socializing and keep kids on track. And, as time went on, I learned, I grew, and eventually what I did was I ended up turning my classroom into kind of a workshop. And so I used bits and pieces of different techniques in order to create that teamwork, that cooperative learning environment in my classroom. And I really depended upon students having the opportunity to interact with each other, to talk with each other about what they were learning, to share opinions and thoughts. And I really encouraged debate as well. And so that is your challenge as a teacher, to use that energy, to use that need in a positive way to advance the goals that you have for your students. So you can also use this need to your advantage when it comes to building relationships. Now, some students are going to be more challenging than others in order to build that relationship and get them talking. But it's very important that you extend that opportunity to your students and try to build that bridge to develop that strong relationship. Additionally, the fact that your students, they crave that interaction, that's going to help you build the culture that you want to build. It's going to help you create that environment that is conducive to learning for everyone. So that means there are moments in your classroom where you build time for, hey, what'd you do this weekend? Or, hey, so-and-so's celebrating a birthday today. Let's pause to wish them a happy birthday. And then that leads on to a conversation about that one particular person and what they want for their birthday and how their day is going to go. And so that makes people feel good, and again, that feeds that need to interact. So you can kind of control it and use it once again to advance the goals that you have for the class. So bottom line, it's all about embracing. There's a number of cooperative learning strategies and different things that you can do in order to get students to work together as a group. I've included some links in the description section below for you to check out and consider. The second thing you should know about the human brain is that the search for meaning is innate. The search for meaning is innate. Now, it's not very deep. Let me explain it to you. With students today, there's an opportunity cost for students to go to school and do the things that you're asking them to do. And now more than ever, students are aware of this. Now, does that mean that you as a teacher, you have to be an entertainer? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Your job is to teach. And that's what you should do. But you're also a leader. And so it's helpful to be aware of these things, because I think that when you're aware of these things, such as the things that I'm sharing with you, it helps you to be a more effective leader, and it helps you to find the right things in order that it takes in order to motivate certain students, because some students are going to need more motivation than the rest. So when we talk about that opportunity cost and students being aware of that opportunity cost, like many of your students, when they're sitting in your classroom, they're just, their minds just drift off sometimes, and they're thinking about their phone. Oh my gosh, I got to text this person. Oh, what's going on Instagram? What's going on TikTok? So there's so many things going on in their mind that they could be doing instead of being in your class, paying attention, and doing what you ask them to do. So being that that's the case, students want to know that there's meaning in what they're doing in your class. They want to know that there is an overall purpose to the tasks that you are asking them to do. And this all goes back to the why. The why. They want to know, okay, why are we doing this? And I think that it's fair that students have this information, because this is going to help them stay motivated. And great leaders are meaning makers. They're meaning makers. And what that means is they're able to articulate to the people who are a part of the business that there's a higher purpose, there's a greater meaning that you are, through your work, are serving and working to fulfill. And when people buy into this, when people believe this, then it's not just a job. It's a calling, and as a result, it's not. You don't have to work as hard in order to motivate them. They're internally motivated to do their very best because they understand that meaning. And so as a teacher, as a leader, you need to do the very same thing in your classroom. So I believe that there are two ways that students drop out. Students drop out by physically just signing the papers and saying, I'm done with school. And then the other way, students mentally drop out. And I believe that happens because they don't see that meaning. They haven't found that meaning, or it hasn't been communicated to them. Now, please don't misunderstand me. This is not me blaming teachers. I love teachers. I am a teacher. But some students are going to need more from you than others in terms of motivation. And perhaps for some students, they need more. They need more in terms of knowing the meaning of this work. And so this is an opportunity, now that you know this is an opportunity for you to sit back and think, okay, how can I help this student find the meaning in the work? Because it could be possible that you have students who are seemingly unmotivated, but perhaps they just need to make sense of the work. They need to make sense of what they're doing in their mind, and then once they have that understanding, that barrier to their engagement, to their motivation will fall, and then they'll just run after the goals and objectives that you have set for them. And so here's an idea of what that may look like for you with your students. I was a social studies teacher. And often I heard my students say, well, I don't see why we need to learn this stuff. I don't need to use it. I won't be using this in the real world. And that didn't offend me. I appreciated my students telling me that and being truthful and honest with me, because it's only then that I could work to try to change their thinking. So I told my students that it's not really about the content. It's about how you acquire the information and how you interact with the information. because that is going to serve to increase your critical thinking skills. And then I would go into a conversation about how many employers today they're hiring and recruiting people that are able to think outside the box and create something brand new. And I expressed to them as well that if they're able to take in all of these facts from history and then not just take them and remember them, then interact with them, analyze them, come up to judge them and come up with some alternatives that people in the past history could have taken that could have possibly prevented war, that could have possibly came up with a better outcome, then that's them exercising and training their brain to be a problem solver. And so that's the way I really broke it down to my students. And I can remember there were times when I just shut down my lesson plan and I spent the whole class, really breaking that down just off the top of my head, just being honest with my students and having a conversation, because I wanted to create that meaning in the things that we were doing in that classroom. Number 3, the human brain searches for meaning through patterns. Human brain searches for meaning through patterns. Now, here's what this means. In order to acquire new information, the brain will, like kind of the way a computer works, the brain will look into the archives to see if there's something that it can use in order to acquire this new information. So in that regard, there's a pattern. There's a pattern. In order to make sense of what's present, the brain is looking at, okay, what do we know from the past that can help us make sense of the present? So that's the learning pattern that the brain follows. And so it's important that prior learning is consequential. And so what that looks like for you as a teacher is that you are always bringing to attention, what the students learned previously, so that they see that there is this pattern, that what we did yesterday, what we did last week, what we did last month, what we did last semester, that all counts. There's a consequence to that. There was meaning in those things that we did, because they're going to help you going forward in the future. Now, I think we do a really good job of this in education. This is, where the KWL charts and other graphic organizers like that come from, in terms of showing students that, your prior knowledge, that's important, because you're going to need that. You're going to have to access that pattern in order to really understand what's in front of you now. So I want to encourage consistency with this formula. Now that this is a brain-based principle, a lot of research on this. It's important that you're always keeping that prior knowledge, that students are able to see how that prior knowledge, how they can use that prior knowledge in order to acquire new information and skills. And so once students have that consistency in using this pattern on a day-to-day basis, it's a great way to keep them engaged, because they know what's coming. They are very familiar with the pattern, and it takes little to no effort to get them jump started for the day. Number 4, when we talk about these patterns, emotions are critical to patterning. Emotions are critical to patterning. You've got to have high or decent level of emotional intelligence in order to really benefit from this pattern. Now, here's what this means. First, let's break down emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to identify and regulate one's emotions, and also build relationships that are filled with empathy. Now, failure, when we talk about failure, that can be difficult. That can be paralyzing for some. But it can also be, as I always say, an opportunity to try again with better information. Here's why emotional intelligence is important. Students who tend to have low emotional intelligence, they respond poorly to failure. They have this doom and gloom. I knew this would happen. I'm not good at math. And then students with a decent level of emotional intelligence, they're able to bounce back after failure. They're more positive about their ultimate outcome. They have that resilience, that grit that we're looking for in response to failure. Now, you can imagine that if one has a poor attitude, a poor response to failure, and they're pessimistic about their capabilities, that's going to be very difficult for them to access that pattern, to use that prior learning, because it's quite possible that there isn't much of that mastery. Even though they were exposed to it, perhaps there's not a whole lot of mastery. And so with students who have a decent level of emotional intelligence, yeah, they're positive. Perhaps there is that mastery that's going to help them access that pattern of, okay, I had this prior knowledge, now I'm going to use that prior knowledge in order to access this new information and accomplish this new task that is right in front of me now. So emotional intelligence is very, very important. And I recently recorded a podcast and I gave you 6 ways that you can improve the emotional intelligence of your students. And I encourage you to check that out. So if you just look in the description section, there is a link that'll take you to that podcast and you can subscribe to that podcast. So number 5, there is a conscious and unconscious process when it comes to learning. So there's conscious and unconscious. So the way I see that is the conscious part is the day-to-day tasks that students are asked to do. The student does these 3 tasks. Yes, I did them. Everyone sees that they're done. It's measurable, nice and easy. We can move on. That's the conscious part. Did you do these tasks? Yes or no? And then everyone moves on. But I want to focus on that unconscious part, because it's that unconscious part that is another way that's going to, when you make that unconscious process visible, that's going to help you motivate students on the back end so that you're not having to pull forth a lot of energy in the future. So here's what we mean by that. The unconscious process of learning is realized during reflection. When students, perhaps it's a learning journal that they're writing out the things that they've learned, how their thinking has changed as a result of what they learned. That's that unconscious part, and it's through reflection, through metacognition, that's how you make that visible for the students to see. And when students are able to see their learning, what that's going to do is that's going to increase their confidence. That's going to increase their self-efficacy when they see, and not only see, but when they feel that they're learning. When they feel this stuff coming out of their brain to their pen onto paper, or if you want them to type it, however you want them to do it, when they not only see it, but when they feel it, when they sense this unconscious learning, this invisible process, when they feel that coming out, that's a great feeling. And when they feel it once, they want to feel it again. So it's very, very, very important that you help students bring that unconscious learning to the forefront. Help them see and feel the learning that is not easily seen, and that's going to greatly motivate them. So number 6, learning is enhanced by challenge, but it's inhibited by threat. So we know this as educators, and so what this means is you have to put in the work in order to build the culture in your classroom. You have to put in the work. You have to be the architect of your environment so that every student feels comfortable and safe to learn in your classroom. That's your responsibility as the leader. So the etymology of that word, the word culture, means to prepare the land for crops. And kind of using that analogy in the classroom, your job is to prepare your students to learn, preparing them to learn. And so you have to set that environment so all of your students are prepared to learn. And so what that means is you have to pay attention to the overall experience that students are having in your classroom. You have to look at it from each one of their perspectives. Do I feel safe? Do I feel valued? Do I feel supported? Do I feel heard? Those are all things that you need to be considering as a leader in the classroom from the perspective of your students. Because when we talk about culture, culture is about removing those barriers to learning for each and every one of your students. You don't want any student to feel threatened. You want them to feel loved, challenged, accepted, all those things. You want them to have a great experience in your classroom. Once again, that doesn't mean you're an entertainer. You're not an entertainer. You're an educator, and you have a job to do. But as a leader, there are those other things that you need to pay attention to. There's those barriers that you need to work to remove from the environment so that each student is prepared to learn. So there you have it. Those are 6 brain-based principles that every teacher should be aware of. I've included an infographic for you to download as well in the description section. Additionally, I've got some research, if you care to look at that as well, available for you in the description section. Also, if you're looking for some bite-sized professional development in the area of classroom leadership, please check out the Classroom Leadership blog on marvinbyrd.com. There's a link to that blog in the description section as well. So until we meet again, please don't forget that teachers are leaders. Bye.